It is my favorite time of year, as this week we will start the FCS playoffs. This year is going to be so much fun, as there are some new faces as top seeds, as well as some old ones. Teams that were expected to be national title favorites at the beginning of the season, like Incarnate, Rhode, and South Dakota State, have had disappointing seasons, paving way for more fun title contenders. Will North Dakota State repeat? Will one of the Montana schools end up back on top? Or will a school like Tarleton State or Lehigh shock everyone and lift the trophy in Nashville in a few weeks? This is my 2025 FCS playoff preview. But before we get into this, if you enjoy college football content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Also, let me know who you think wins the FCS title in the comment section below. North Dakota State has dominated almost everyone this season, looks to be the favorite to win the FCS title heading into the playoffs. Their two closest games of the season came against Youngstown State on November 1st, where they won 38-30, and they survived against North Dakota on the road 15-10. They are outscoring opponents 444-133, which is an average scoring margin of 40.4 to 12.1 points per game. Their offense is a ground and pound offense, as usual, which is averaging 221.5 rushing yards per game, while their passing attack is averaging 235.2 yards per game. These stats are all before they play St. Thomas, as I am recording this before that game due to the holiday release schedule. The defense is dominant as they have held opponents to under 100 rushing yards per game and about 3 yards per carry, while opposing offenses are being held to under 150 passing yards a game. This team is truly dominant, and they are killing it in the second quarter, scoring 172 points through their first 11 games. They have dominated the Citadel, Tennessee State, SEMO, South Dakota, Southern Illinois, Illinois State, Indiana State, South Dakota State, and Northern Iowa, beating all those teams by more than double-digit scores. Cole Payton has done amazing things through the air and on the ground and could be the next great North Dakota State quarterback to lead the Bison to the national title. I would be scared if I had to play the Bison in Fargo in the playoffs. They are the Missouri Valley champion, which is the SEC of the FCS, and earned their auto bid. Montana State has looked really good this year after starting the season 0-2 with losses to Oregon and South Dakota State. That South Dakota State loss does not look as great as originally thought, as the Jackrabbits are having a rough season this year, but that does not take away from the fact that Montana State is a national title contender this season after losing the national title game to North Dakota State last year. Leading to their game against Montana this past weekend, the Bobcats were rolling as they had beaten every one of their opponents by double digits, and they beat opponents during that run by an average score of 43.3 to 9.9. During that run, the most points they allowed was 17 to Cal Poly and UC Davis. Their most impressive win has to either be their 57-3 domination of Eastern Washington or 55-7 victory over Northern Colorado. Justin Lampson looked really good and has not really turned the ball over and has been a part of a three-headed rushing attack along with former Wisconsin running back Julius Davis and Adam Jones. They continue rolling, beating Montana to win the Big Sky Conference 31-28 on the road. The Bobcats are a dangerous team and come out of a great conference in the Big Sky. They should be one of the favorites to win it all this year. Montana has looked as good as advertised this season and could be a national title contender. What's new? Even with their loss to Montana State to finish the regular season 11-1, I still feel very confident in this team. They have a great early season win against North Dakota, a game they won 24-23, and won 8 games by double-digit scores. For the Montana State game, Montana averaged 42 points per game and held opponents to 22.82 points per game. They only allowed more than 30 points in a game to Idaho, Idaho State, Sacramento State, and Montana State. Their defense may not be as stout as some of the others in the playoffs, but their offense has looked really good. They are averaging 178.5 rushing yards per game and nearly 300 passing yards per game. Khalil Ayat has looked amazing this season, throwing for over 3,000 passing yards, while Eli Gilman has been really good in the run game. Montana and Montana State both played brutal schedules with the Big Sky, basically being the Big Ten of the FCS, so this team is battle-tested and should be competing for the national title come late December. I already did a deep dive into Tarleton State this year, but that was earlier in the season after they beat Army. Tarleton State feels like they are ready to explode, but their late season loss to Abilene Christian does make me pause for concern. This team opened up the season with a bang, destroying Portland State on the road, then traveling across the country and beating Army in double overtime 30-27. They proceeded to dominate everyone, beating Mississippi Valley State 59-3, Central Arkansas 56-10, Chattanooga 52-24, Southern Utah 52-42, Utah Tech 41-23, number 23 West Georgia 45-10, and Eastern Kentucky 31-7. They were beating opponents by an average score of 48-17. Then they ran into the roadblock that is Abilene Christian, who beat the Texans 31-28. They did rebound with the win over North Alabama 61-0 after their bye week, but that loss to the Wildcats did cost them the United Athletic Conference title. This is still a really good team and maybe one of the best teams in the country, as heading into the last week of the season, they were winning games by an average score of 45.18 to 16.09. And their pass defense held opponents to under 150 passing yards a game. Their offense was the crown jewel, though, as they are rushing for over 200 yards per game and over 250 passing yards per game. Victor Gabalis has managed this offense really well at quarterback, and the three-man rushing attack of Trey Page III, James Page, and Caleb Lewis has been dominant. If I had to pick a team not named North Dakota State, Montana, or Montana State to win it all, Tarleton State would be my pick, and I may even pick them over one of the other three. This team plays their game, they could beat anyone in the playoffs. Lehigh has put together another great season heading into their final week of the season. They were viewed as a top 4 seed, which means they could be legit title contenders. They entered their game against Lafayette at 11-0, winning 6 straight games by 20 points or more. While they would only beat the Leopards by 10, the win not only gave them the Patriot League Conference title, but also allowed them to lock up a 12-0 regular season. They had beaten Richmond, Sacred Heart, Duquesne, Bucknell, Penn, Yale, who won the Ivy, Columbia, Fordham, Georgetown, Holy Cross, and Colgate, but into the Lafayette game have not really been tested since beating Richmond, who was ranked in the FCS top 25 at the time, but went into the last week of the season with a 6-5 record. The wins over Penn and Yale were good wins though, and gosh, I am so happy the Ivy can now be discussed in the playoffs. They have been carried by their defense all season long, which is only allowing 12.27 points per game and 66.8 rushing yards per game. Their defense is one of the best in the nation, while their offense is balanced, averaging 33.1 points per game, 225.8 rush yards per game, and 200 passing yards per game. It would be so much fun to see Lehigh go on a run in the playoffs, but due to how the Patriot League is viewed, it's hard to picture them beating the Montana schools, North Dakota State, and maybe even Tarleton State. But hey, that's why we play the games, right? If Lehigh is playing in the semifinals of the FCS games, I will be there, as I live less than 2 hours away from the school. Mercer football locked up the SoCon auto bid and played Auburn in their season finale. During their FCS schedule, they put together a great 9-1 season, with their matchup against UC Davis being called off in the fourth quarter due to rain and lightning. At the time of the cancellation, UC Davis held a 23-17 lead with over 7 minutes left to play. Mercer's social media team wrote, "Tonight's 11th annual FCS kickoff has been declared a no contest due to rain and intermittent lightning as continued to move through central Alabama." The following week, they fell to Presbyterian, would then proceed to go on a 9-game win streak and finish SoCon Conference play 8-0. They survived against Wofford 22-21, East Tennessee State 38-34, and against number 24 Western Carolina 49-47, but dominated the Citadel, Sanford, Princeton, VMI, Furman, and Chattanooga. In FCS play, Braden Atkinson threw for 3,238 yards, 33 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions, as the offense averaged 41.7 points per game. When it came to the run game, they averaged 176 yards per game on the ground. They have one of the best rushing defenses in the nation, holding opponents to 73.7 rushing yards per game, and their defense allowed 19.7 points per game. After struggling for so long, head coach Mike Jacobs has built the Bears into a premier team in the SoCon with back-to-back conference titles. Stephen F. Austin got off to a rough start to the season, falling to Houston 27-0 and Abilene Christian 28-20. But since then, they have played extremely well, and it led to them locking up the auto bid for the Southland Conference and winning it outright. The Jacks are currently on a 10-game win streak, beating the likes of Cal Poly, McNeese State, Incarnate Word, Nichols, East Texas A&M, UT Rio Grande Valley, Houston Christian, Lamar, and Northwestern State. They are coming into the playoffs hot after winning every one of those games by double-digit points, closing out the regular season with a 62-14 win over Northwestern State on the road. Their offense is averaging 35.48 points per game, while their defense has stifled opponents, holding them to 15.25 points per game, 77.5 rushing yards per game, and 175 passing yards per game. The Abilene Christian loss is the only real knock on their resume. Sam Vidlak has looked good at quarterback, throwing for 2,090 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, while Jarrell Wimbley has led the rushing game with 888 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. They dominated the Southland this year. Can they continue that momentum into December? UC Davis shockingly locked up a top 8 seed for the playoffs. There were some questions on whether they were going to even make the bracket heading into the weekend, but their 31-27 win over Sac State in the 71st and possibly last Causeway Classic not just locked them into the playoffs, but also gave them a first-round bye. They started the season with the aforementioned no contest with Mercer, which some wonder if they would have come back to bite them, but it would not. They would then beat Utah Tech before getting destroyed by Washington in the FCS-FBS matchup. They would proceed to win 4 straight over Southern Utah, Weber State, Cal Poly, and number 14 Northern Arizona, putting up a lot of points in those games. They would then fall to Idaho State, but beat Idaho before losing to 2-seed Montana 38-17, before closing out the season with their aforementioned win over Sacramento State. They are averaging 31.18 points per game, but also allowing 29.45 points per game. If you take out the Washington drubbing, it is 33.3 to 25.42, respectively. They are letting everyone rush all over them, allowing 181.7 rushing yards per game, which is a bit concerning. I don't foresee them going on a run with the defensive concerns, but they could win a game at home. They play the winner of Rhode Island Central Connecticut State, and this program is still on the rise. Like I talked about in my video last year, Rhode Island football has turned into one of the better programs in the CAA in recent years, and locked up the conference title to earn the auto bid. After starting off the season 4-0 with wins over Campbell, Stony Brook, Holy Cross, and LIU, they would drop back-to-back games to Western Michigan and Brown. The loss to Brown hurts as it cost them the Governor's Cup, snapping their 6-game win streak in the series. They have since rebounded, winning every game by double digits this season, beating New Hampshire 38-27, Albany 58-17, Bryant 38-17, Elon 24-20, and Maine 45-13 before closing out the regular season against Hampton. They did not play either Villanova or Monmouth this season, missing out on a golden opportunity. The majority of the schedule has been in the bottom half of the conference, and their best win is New Hampshire. That is cause for concern as they aren't as tested heading into a difficult playoff bracket, so I don't expect them to make it very far this year. The only thing that matters is that they continue to build. Antoine Littleton Jr. has been the bell cow when it comes to the rushing attack, while Devin Farrell has played well as a starting quarterback. When comparing to the rest of the bracket, the defense is average. They went into the Hampton game beating their opponents by an average score of 31.55 to 20. Central Connecticut State would lock up the automatic bid for the NEC conference, putting together an 8-4 season. They opened up the season falling to UConn 59-13, or beating American International and St. Francis. They then would lose to Merrimack 16-14 and Dartmouth 35-28 to start the season 2-3. They would proceed to go on a 5-game win streak and were in control of winning the conference title before losing to Duquesne 38-33. That opened up the door for the Dukes to compete for the conference auto bid. They would take care of business by beating Mercyhurst 35-28 to earn the bid. They are a team that is averaging 24.3 points per game and allowing 23.8 points per game. They're just average on both sides of the ball, and I do worry Brady Olson's 17 touchdowns and 12 interceptions are a bit concerning. Elijah Howard has led this team with his rushing effort, accumulating 934 yards and 8 touchdowns, but does have 4 fumbles on the year, 2 of which were lost. I don't foresee the Blue Devils going on a run in the playoffs, if we are being honest. South Dakota is going to be one of the better at-large teams in the nation coming out of the Missouri Valley Conference. The Coyotes finished the regular season 8-4, but I don't think that's a true representation of how good they are. They opened up the season with losses to Iowa State 55-7 and Lamar 20-17 on the road before beating Northern Colorado in overtime at home. They then beat Drake 42-21 before running into the buzzsaw that is North Dakota State, losing to the Bison 51-13. They would proceed to go on a 3-game win streak, beating Murray State, Indiana State, and Northern Iowa, before falling to Illinois State 21-13. They closed out the regular season, beating number 8 North Dakota, number 8 South Dakota State, and number 21 Southern Illinois in 5 overtimes 53-51. This team is going to be a tough out. Do I view them as a national title contender? No, but they will be rested and have been tested this season. I would not want to match up with them in the first round or even the second round. I am not expecting Drake to go on a run in the FCS playoffs, as San Diego is the only Pioneer League school to ever win an FCS playoff game, as they would pull it off in 2016 and 2017. The Pioneer League is 2-12 all-time in the FCS playoffs. With that being said, crazier things have happened in college football, and Drake earned their spot by winning the Pioneer League title for the 3rd time in a row. Drake has put together an 8-3 season this year and have won 7 of their last 8 games. This team is a tested one, with 2 of their losses coming to South Dakota State 37-21 and South Dakota 42-21. Their 3rd loss was to St. Thomas, who did just get blown out by North Dakota State. The Bulldogs would beat Upper Iowa, Valparaiso, San Diego, Davidson, Marist, Butler, Dayton, and Morehead State. Lock up the conference title, the Bulldogs would come back from being down 7-3 for most of the game, but scored 14 points in the 4th quarter to win 17-10 over Morehead State. They have been carried by their defense, which is only allowing 15.82 points per game, less than 200 passing yards per game, but their offense has been averaging 26 points per game on offense, and are a ground and pound team averaging 200.6 rushing yards per game. It's been a great season for Drake. Like I said earlier, I don't see them going on a run. Villanova gets a spot in the playoffs after winning 8 straight games to close out the regular season. They would start off 1-0 with wins over Colgate before falling to Penn State and Monmouth in back-to-back weeks, allowing 50 points in both games. Since then, their defense has improved significantly and this team is rolling at the right time. During their 8-game win streak, they beat William & Mary, New Hampshire, Elon, Hampton, Albany, Towson, Stony Brook, and Sacred Heart. They are averaging 30.6 points per game while only allowing 22.64 points per game. They're a well-rounded offense and have an average defense, but do have the experience of playing against the Penn State team that had 2 of the best running backs in college football. Nova will have a bad taste in their mouth after not getting a shot at the conference title and not playing Rhode Island because of their September loss to Monmouth. This Nova versus Harvard game is going to be a lot of fun. The Ivy League is a 2-bid league. Harvard makes the bracket after getting punched in the mouth by Yale. They talked about earlier in the season, I felt super high about Harvard and thought they could be a dangerous team come December and probably could get a bye had they won that game. But they got taken behind the shed by Yale and it really wasn't a game. They are sitting at 9-1 with wins over Stetson, Brown, Holy Cross, Cornell, Merrimack, Princeton, Dartmouth, Columbia, and Penn. This team is a complete one, averaging nearly 40 points per game with 39.4 on offense and only allowing 18.1 points per game on defense. The defense is holding teams to 105 rushing yards per game and have only allowed more than 20 points per game once before the last 2 weeks. There are some concerns with them allowing 40 points in back-to-back weeks to Penn and Yale to close out the regular season. Can they get things right, or is their magical season going to come to a heartbreaking end on the road against Villanova? What a resurgence it has been for Tennessee Tech this year. I already talked about their rise under head coach Bobby Wilder, but this season has been an absolute storybook. Heading into the last week of the season, all they had to do was beat UT Martin and they would earn their first auto bid for the OVC Big South Conference. It would also mean they won their first outright conference title since 1972, and they would take care of business beating UT Martin 20-17. It is only the second time in school history they are playing in the playoffs, as the last time they appeared, they lost to Central Arkansas in the first round in 2011. It is also only their second time in school history they won double-digit games in a season. They went into their game against Kentucky a few weeks ago sitting at 10-0 on the season before being blown out by the Wildcats 42-10. They scored more than 60 points in a game 3 times, beating Cumberland 65-0, Davidson 72-24, and Western Illinois 66-20. They went to the final game of the season, beating opponents by an average score of 45.2 to 15.3 on the backs of one of the best rushing attacks in the nation, averaging 219.5 yards per game, with their 3-headed monster of Quintel Quinn, Quidarius Jennings, and Kakoa Vice-Paris. Vice-Paris has also played well at quarterback. It is a special Tennessee Tech team, and I can't wait to see what they could do in the playoffs. North Dakota may be the most shocking team to make the FCS playoffs after going 7-5 and being chosen over the likes of Monmouth, Presbyterian, Austin Peay, and Southern Utah. North Dakota pushed Kansas State to the brink in Week 1 before beating Portland State, who might have pulled a Lane Kiffin USC this weekend. They then lost to 3-seed Montana 24-23, were going on a 5-game win streak, beating Valparaiso, Northern Iowa, Youngstown State, Southern Illinois, and Indiana State. They would lose 3 of their last 4 games to South Dakota, North Dakota State, and South Dakota State in overtime, beating Murray State. That South Dakota State game looked like an elimination game as they fell in overtime, but that would turn out to not be the case, as it would be the 6th Missouri Valley squad to get in. They are averaging 34.8 points per game and are allowing about 20 points per game. This team will be carried by their defense, and their offensive run game is averaging 199.3 yards per game. Can they pull off an upset over a Tennessee Tech team that is on a magical run? South Dakota State enters the final week of the season on the edge of their seats, not knowing if they were going to make the FCS playoffs. It was absolutely insane as they entered the season as the number 3 team in the preseason polls. The Jackrabbits would start the season 7-0 with wins over Sacramento State, 2-seed Montana State, Drake, Mercyhurst, Youngstown State, Northern Iowa, and Murray State. They would lose starting quarterback Chase Mason, and since he got hurt, they would lose 4 of their last 5 games. They were blown out by North Dakota State and lost double-digit games to Indiana State and Illinois State. They would also lose a heartbreaker to South Dakota by 7. They would close out the regular season with the 34-31 overtime win over North Dakota, which is probably the only reason they even made the playoffs. There are still questions around whether Mason will be good to go in the playoffs, and they host New Hampshire, then they have to face the buzzsaw that is Montana. Could they go on a magical run? Don't ever count out the Jackrabbits. New Hampshire is the 3rd CAA team to make the playoffs, along with Nova and Rhode Island. The The Wildcats enter the postseason with an 8-4 record, with their win over Monmouth being the catapult game sending them into the playoffs. They opened up the season with wins over North Central and Holy Cross, before losing heartbreakers to Ball State and Dartmouth by less than a touchdown in both games. They then beat Albany before falling to Nova and Rhode Island. They enter the playoffs hot on a 5-game win streak, beating Campbell, William and Mary, number 6 Monmouth, Bryant, and Maine. Their offense is a cause for concern and their defense is average. They will have a major test against South Dakota State in the first round. Win that game and oh, hey, you get Montana, both of which are on the road. I do not foresee the Wildcats going on a run. The Penguins are back in the playoffs for the first time since 2023 and the second time since 2007. Youngstown State has won at least one game in the playoffs since 1990 and played in the FCS championship game in 2016. They entered the postseason with an 8-4 record. They would win their first 2 games of the season, beating Mercyhurst and Robert Morris before losing to Michigan State. They then beat Towson before losing to South Dakota State and North Dakota, and they would beat Illinois State and Murray State before losing to North Dakota State by 8 in the Fargo Dome. They close out the regular season strong with 3 straight wins. They are averaging 36.2 points per game, offensively behind their 205.8 rushing yards per game, but their defense can't stop a nosebleed, allowing 30 points per game, which is concerning. Bo Brungard is having a fantastic season with 1,378 rushing yards and 24 touchdowns on the ground, while also throwing for 2,917 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Penguins go as he goes. He continues to stay healthy and play well. The Penguins will be a dangerous team in the playoffs. This Yale game should be fun to watch. Yale pulled off a shocking upset this weekend when they beat Harvard 45-28, lock up the first ever Ivy League bid to the FCS playoffs. Yale did not just beat a team I spoke very highly of a few weeks ago, but destroyed them. They took a 17-0 lead early in the game and never looked back. The game was over at half when they were up 31-14, and the Crimson could not stop their offense all day. Yale started the season 2-0 with wins over Holy Cross and Cornell, before falling to Lehigh and Dartmouth in back-to-back road games. They would win 5 of their last 6 games by 12 points or more, with their only close game coming against Princeton on the road. They're averaging 36.7 points at home, but only 19 points on the road, going 2-2 away from the Yale Bowl. They closed out the season on a 6-game win streak, beating Stonehill, Penn, Columbia, Brown, Princeton, and Harvard. Their defense is holding opponents to 17.2 points per game and 109.3 rushing yards per game, while their offense is balanced. Dante Reno has looked good in their 10 games, while Josh Pitzenberger put together over 1,200 yards of rushing on the ground and 15 touchdowns. I am super curious to see how the Ivy League schools match up with the other schools in the playoffs because they usually only play against regional teams. This team is a wild card and is coming into the playoffs with a lot of momentum. Southeastern Louisiana would lock up the last home playoff game and will be hosting Illinois State, a team I believe that is dangerous but is coming off a blowout loss in the last week of the season. They have put together an impressive season this year and are sitting at 9-3. They did open up the season against Louisiana Tech, losing 24-0, or blowing out both Murray State and Mississippi Valley State. Their second loss would come against LSU in a blowout fashion, or going on a 5-game win streak, pitching 2 shutouts against McNeese and Northwestern State. They would lose a heartbreaker to Lamar 14-12 on the road, costing them the Southland Conference auto bid, would finish the season beating Incarnate Word 10-7 and Nichols 38-26. They are averaging 33.3 points per game and only allowing 17.75 points per game. This defense is great, as if you take away the FBS games, they are only allowing 13.3 points per game in their FCS games. This team is a dangerous team that will be a lot of fun to watch and will be in a 12-round fight with a dangerous Illinois State team. Their multi-back running system averages 179.5 yards per game, and they will punch opponents in the mouth. Illinois State is another well-tested team heading into the playoffs and another Missouri Valley Conference team. They opened up the season with a 35-3 loss to Oklahoma, while winning 3 straight over Morehead State, Eastern Illinois, and North Alabama. They then ran into the buzzsaw that is North Dakota State before beating Murray State. They then fell to Youngstown State before beating number 21 South Dakota, Northern Iowa, Indiana State, and number 15 South Dakota State. They closed out the regular season at home against Southern Illinois. I do not view them as a national title contender, as they are averaging 32.7 points per game and holding opponents to 26.3 points per game. It will be a scary team to match up with in the playoffs, as is every Missouri Valley team though. This FCS playoffs is going to be so much fun, and I can't wait to see what chaos goes down. What do you think? Did the committee get things right? Who do you think wins it all? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out one of my other videos, YouTube things you will love right here. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to embrace the grind.